Okay, I think that we can start right now. Okay, welcome to today's webinar. Okay, today, as you can see, I'm wearing mixes. Okay, with the community, and also I've got our partner that give me a nice rating for the crannies. Okay, so welcome to today's webinar again. And today we will be sharing a practical tips and tricks. As you know, with Acronis, one of the focus mainly it's an endpoint security. And as you know, endpoint security is one of the topics that I mentioned it many times, but you know very well that is really important. It's one of the topics that you ask him quite often, and is critical as well for your organization and for your task and for your daily work. So, but today we are going to be focused on another topic, and the topic is how build an incident response plan. And for that, we have today here two specialists. We have Markus Bauer, who you probably know him because he has joined all the webinars previously, and he is a senior technology evangelist in EMEA. And also in other hands, we have Irina Artioli, who is the cyber protection evangelist. And as you read, you know, the main point that we put here in the LinkedIn events, there are so many areas we will see today. But one of the area it was highlighted to me is one of the checklists that you are going to use to evaluate your current response plan. And is one of the things that is catch up to me because it was really interesting. But there are other few areas that I think is really interesting. Irina and Markus are going to explain also more in detail. So here we are. So I want to thank you, of course, Acronis, to provide us this kind of contents, because we are not just doing this webinar, we're planning to do more webinars, keeping doing in the endpoint security. So therefore, I'm going to call Irina and Markus. Can you show up? Okay, cool, excellent. So we are here to listen to you. Okay. At the end, please, if you have any question, make sure that your question is, you know, in the question and answer, you can chat, leave it there. And then at the end, we are going to answer your question. Okay, all in your hands. Go ahead, Irina.
Thank you so much, Angel, and thank you so much for joining us, dear attendees. I know it's early. I hope you grabbed your coffee and you're ready to go through this wonderful topic. And we're going to talk today about how to build an incident response plan and how to protect your business. And here with you, both of us, me, Irina Artioli, and Markus Bauer, and we will be sharing our experience, our feedback, and our comments, right? And please feel free. I even encourage you to use Q&A, right? Because that's why we're here, to exchange our opinions, our comments, our feedback, our questions. So leave them there, and we will be happy to respond them in the end, as it was mentioned by Angel. So on this note, let's start. We will walk you through 5 W's. What, who, where, when, and why do we need incident response plan, or what is it, right, at all? Then we will talk about 12-step checklist, and then we will talk about how to build an efficient incident response plan. Markus will share his know-hows, I'm sure, so please stay till the end, because he really does have this, I would put it, secret knowledge. So I will put some intrigue here, and then we will answer your questions. So get ready. It's going to be, I hope, interesting for you as well. And to start, I want you to use a little bit of imagination, right? And imagine that you are skydiving just through the sky. Maybe some of you love skydiving, have certificates, but what if your parachute won't open, even though you had a trust and you were thinking that you will have a safe landing? But what if it doesn't? And just like in the world of cybersecurity, even the best laid or prepared plans can sometimes fail. So like those unexpected moments which comes in life, right, or when parachute fails to open, real life incidents, they also can catch some of the organizations off guard. And then the question comes, who is there to fix it? Well, honestly, you will get the rest of your life to fix it, right? So be careful with that. But if the parachute is not opening, and then if real life incident catch the organization off guard, do we have this well-designed incident response plan, which will come into play, or do we not? How do we create one, right? How can we adjust it in the face of some unforeseen circumstances, right? Like if something won't work, can we do it fast, or will there be a longer downtime, an unexpected downtime, right? It's like much the skydiver, right, who swiftly reacts to the fact that parachute is not opening, right? Then the same way incident response team must be really agile and have really fast decisions, fast actions made to make sure that this downtime will be as less as possible, right? And of course, to do that, it's not so easy, because in the environment where we have all these barriers, like threats are evolving, all of us know this, right? Ransomware have evolved, it's much more faster, it's still there, it's strike harder, and every day we see more than 270,000 of new samples of malware. They are arriving like a huge wave over us, and of course cyber criminals use automation, use artificial intelligence, just to make sure that those waves will be more intense, more often, they will scale it across the regions, across the number of targets, because for them, it doesn't matter whom to target. What matters for them is data. They want to have your data. So those attacks, they started to be more frequent, they're more diverse, there are more different types of cyber threats. And here on the slide, you can see the top, let's say, list, right, of the highest concern on the most frequent cyber threats which are happening. Even though we know that most of the cyber threats, they do start from phishing attacks, right? And I will remind you that more than 30% of phishing emails are still getting opened. 30%, that's a huge number if you multiply by the number of emails which are going through your organizations, right? And then, of course, it comes to ransomware, and people do afraid ransomware because it means downtime if you don't have this incident response plan. Account takeover and malware, these are on top. But if you look on the bottom, it's zero-day attacks. They are the last one. People afraid, like, let's say, less, right, of zero-day attacks. But let's remind ourselves the recent stories. It's not only even 0 days. It's even well-known vulnerabilities, which should we take care of, because if we won't take care of them, then somebody will. And we should remember that. And of course, what consequences of all of this when we don't take proper measures, or our posture is not, security posture is not good enough, right? What are the other barriers to keep it up to date? Lack of skilled personnel. No wonder, with all this AI and the tricks and the most recent attacks and most recent tools which are used by cyber criminals, of course, even the personnel are not, not able to follow all these tricks, right? But most of those tricks, what I can tell you, they are just repeating the previous ones, but of course they do use some new ways, like for example with phishing attacks for Microsoft Office, right? If before they were using macros, they were using malicious macros were in Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word. Now when Microsoft has fixed the issues with macros, right, they have disabled it, the cyber criminals started to follow OneNote, and they started to implement those fake buttons in OneNote, which really convincing to click on this button, and you want to click on this button, but they're fake. And of course, this blurry document which you want to see, they even send a password in this email. So of course they do know a little bit of social engineering, or maybe more enough. And of course, they really try to use all of this in their current attacks, right? So let's be careful with this. And just like the video in the beginning, when it happens, we should be ready. But where to start, right? Do we know those narrow places? Do we know our vulnerabilities? Do we know how fast will we respond? Just again, I will come back to this example of phishing, right? Does everyone in your organization, or does every one of you know how to report a phishing email? Because let's start from this, from a very simple thing. Because once I asked this question, I received the response, I don't phish, right? Of course. And that response was like, oh, just one phishing email. Like even if I want to report it, nothing would happen, like a drop in the ocean. But again, if we have a good procedure, a straightforward procedure to report the phishing emails, it will help to build a good incident plan, incident response plan. Why? Because you can identify the patterns by this reported email, tactics, techniques which were used by threat actors. So of course, this information will help to improve these incident response strategies. That's why it's important even to start from very beginning. But again, there is a question why. Why is it important to always know what you're trying to achieve? Because not everyone may share the same goal. During the incident, or during the security incident, what can happen? Different stakeholders may have different goals, different priorities. Some of them may be focusing on minimizing damage, some of them on restoring services, right? Some of them might even think about preserving some evidence for further legal actions, or protecting customer data. So there might be different goals, and we all should follow. That's why it's needed to be followed a proper incident response plan. And sequence here is very important. So let's take an example. If there was an incident, security incident, maybe data breach or ransomware, right? So maybe we have found an unusual activity or suspicious behavior which was detected, which indicated a potential security breach. Or maybe some files were encrypted and there was a request for ransom, right? So what should we do? We should assess, we should know what is the incident nature, what is the severity, what is the impact. And and for ransomware, for example, we should detect the presence of ransomware. We should identify it through security monitoring. And of course, then it should be an action once it is identified. So we need to understand how significant it is, right? If the incident response plan is activated, and if the team is ready to take those actions. Because what might happen, yes, we know we need to break the glass, but what do we do then, right? So that's why sequence is important here as well. We should know who is isolating affected systems, right? What will be how to limit the further damage, how to prevent unauthorized access, how to limit the spread of ransomware. And all the steps should be done in alignment, in collaboration. So that's why it's important to have a proper, not just only prepared, but also well-tested incident response plan, because you, of course, need to run some simulations. You need to make sure that all the teams know what they are doing. You can create some tabletop exercises. You can run some simulations, as we said, because what you can find out, you would think that it's a perfectly made incident response plan, right? But it turned out that certain team of members, they lack awareness of their roles and responsibilities. So it's going to create a little of chaos. And then afterwards, you will have to face the consequences, right? And of course, testing will help you to identify all the weakness. It will help you to refine the process, and of course, to ensure that the team, the response team, is well prepared and coordinated. So it will really help you to strengthen your plan and to make sure that you are ready to protect your organization. And on this note, I want to ask Markus to join me from his mute. Hello, Markus.
Hello.
And let's go to talk about those 12 steps which are needed for building a ransomware defense strategy, right? And let's start from the first step. We need to deploy behavioral anti-malware measures to complement legacy signature-based AV antivirus here. What do you think, Markus, about this point? Is it really needed? Why is it needed right now?
Should I do some jokes? No, that's a serious topic, so no jokes here. It is needed. This is how to say mm, mm, it's no discussion point for me, to be honest. Traditional AV signature based is not working anymore for the highly advanced attacks. Everybody hears a lot about AI here and there, ChatGPT, and this is also why ransomware and other malware is evolving, because they are using these new AI technologies, and therefore there is no signature at all. If you don't know something, how should you protect something with a signature? So you need to have behavior engines. There is no other option, unfortunately.
I agree with you, because even if cyber criminals use artificial intelligence, right, why shouldn't we to use it for defense, right? And that's important point here. The second step, update countermeasures like email security and URL filtering. Well, I touched a little bit, right, on this, because of course it's very important. But recently, the example which is happening, you know that Google released some of the domains which can be used right now. One of them is .zip domain. We all know those zip documents. So how cyber criminals can misuse it? Do you think they misuse this opportunity? No, they're trying to use this opportunity just to create more of those websites, malicious websites, where you would think you will download some legal software because you will see .zip. And some of us who are not very attentive will get on this trick. We will be lured, right? And we will download some malicious, some it depends, right? Because they can use different type of malware, but definitely there will be some kind of info stealer which will be on your system. So be careful with this. Of course, you need to have a really good email security solution, right, Markus?
Absolutely. So two things here to add. So first of all, this with the zip, I didn't know. So thanks for informing me as well. What what I already saw, which is funny, they do these nice typos like writing Google with 3 O's, and you don't see it. Trust me, you don't see these typos. So this is really dangerous. And the second thing, Irina, you already mentioned in the beginning, most malware is still coming through phishing. Depending on the statistics, 80 to 90%, even more I have seen already. So it makes totally sense to have a filter on top, like email security or URL filtering, to filter it out before it hits my machine. Easy.
True, because otherwise, yes, and that's when we talk about different layers, right? That's what we should have. And deploy tools that increase visibility of IT resources and data flows. And actually, Markus, you've touched a little bit this topic. How would you protect if you don't know what to protect from, right?
Yeah, it's always the same. Know it, and how should you do it? It's not only with malware, it's always in life. So, and here is on your picture, I love this picture with the fishing hook with the multiple arms. But yeah, 0 days is a big topic. These 0 days vulnerabilities, they are there, full stop. We cannot avoid it, but we can make ourselves and especially our IT guys aware by scanning the system, check if there is something, and if there is something, close it down. And again, as said, to see what's going on, you need a tool to have this visibility, because without visibility, you're nothing. Really important, and this is will be also a part in the response plan, is visibility. See what's going on. because only then I can react. And therefore, you have to have some tools like vulnerability assessment, multi-layer approach, different tools. We already mentioned this layered approach. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yeah, the picture, it's actually talks about Clop ransomware, right? But I'm sure, guys, it's a recent attack. Well, pretty much recent. It happened, I think, by the end of February, right? And the vulnerabilities were exploited, and it was rather huge because it impacted across the globe. In many different countries, there was a spike of ransomware attacks during this period of time, so it was really massive. And talking about well-known vulnerabilities, this VMware vulnerability, right, which happened also afterwards. The patch was available already. It was well known for 2 years, but the systems, they were not patched, many of them. So again, with vulnerabilities, it's like Formula One, right? Because it's whether the admins are winning or cyber criminals, because they scan within 15 minutes when actually the patches are released. So let's think about eliminating external and internal network exposures, right? But yeah, that's where we start. And then here we should talk about who can have an access, right, to some of the, let's say, what type of access people might have, right? And what resources or what systems are necessary for them to be accessed, right? So because if it's unnecessary, it's better to eliminate because it can be one of the gaps. And on the other side, with the recent attacks where cyber criminals used a lot MFA fatigue techniques, right? And I think we've talked about this before. Of course, you should use and implement multi-factor authentication, right? And you should use a privilege approach, right? So and be careful to whom you provide those privileges, right? Because many of the credentials are being compromised and data is being accessed just because there might be some human error behind it, right? So we do need pay attention here. But that's more probably I talk on internal side, right? Maybe you can add something on external or internal, Markus.
Mm-hmm. This network exposure is an interesting topic because unfortunately most of the PCs already expose themselves to the network. Maybe you saw this when you install Windows on a machine, or when you buy a new machine and it's connected the first time to the network. It will ask you, should I be available for visibility on the network? Which means if somebody is asking into the network, hey, is there a machine? I will say, yeah, here is a machine, you can connect. And this is, unfortunately, by default, it's more or less turned on. So this is the first easy step. Just turn it off. And another thing you already mentioned a little bit is the external stuff. Often you have devices where you don't think about, like a printer with universal PnP. So it's open a port to external because it's somehow giving you a possibility to access it from the outside world. So it's open a port, and every open port is a potential entry point for criminals. So these are often things which is just forgotten. Oh, a new printer, yeah, install it. And nobody's thinking about, oh, it's a network printer. Maybe we should check what the printer is really doing. And also working together with other companies, it's even harder because you cannot control them. Maybe you work together partnering with another company. They, in my delivery chain, they are doing one piece, and therefore I work together. I'm not sure about their systems. Are they safe? What are they sending into my network? So yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think we can fill a complete webinar alone with the network topic here. But let's move to the next point, because you already said multifactor. This is something
Yes.
I love,
Go
managing
ahead, Markus.
passwords. Yeah, no, you know the story, Irina. The most used passwords are stuff like 1234 and password as password. And you guess what? I was on a conference. I was a speaker. And what was on a post-it on the table below the speaky laptop? The password of
Of
the
course.
network. Ah, come on. It's still there. People, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, that's what happens. And, I think it was Marriott Hotel, which constantly, like 4 or 5 years in a row, they had data breaches. And it was coming just from the like clerks, right, who are standing there to greet the visitors who are coming. Just because this password over there, they take those credentials because they need to enter the system, and it's on the screen because they change personnel, like maybe they doing shifts, and the next one need to know this password. That's how the systems are getting broken. So be careful with your credentials, take care of them. Again, I will repeat it, if you want, there will be someone who will. They will take care of it, but not the way you want. So then, of course, build a security awareness training program. Of course, it is very important. But when you build it, what's more important is to test it and then again retest it, because it should be always up to date. I will always remind you about this parachute video. You don't know what's going to happen. How fast are you able to react to those changes? That's what's important here. From your side, Markus, any points here to add? Let's go ahead.
If this will be in my incident plan as well, it's a big topic where you mentioned. For sure, trainings and then test.
Yes, of course. The other thing is implement automated programmatic vulnerability scanning and patch management. Well, we couldn't, escape this from the beginning because it is a rather important topic, right? And we should have vulnerability assessment, not just only for visibility, right? You should know where are your gaps. And of course, patch management to make sure that you know how to cover those gaps. It should be automated, because imagine if you have rather large park of machines, it will be rather hard. But even with the smaller ones, with all these updates which are coming in, right, with all these vulnerabilities which are being discovered, with all the patches from different vendors, you need to be up to date. And only automated patch management can help you to do it without like extra stress, right? Do you want to add anything here, Markus, or should we go ahead?
We can go. You mentioned everything important.
All right, then step number 8, reduce the number of agents on endpoints and consoles in your organization. That's also very important because we don't want to waste time on just going from one console to another one, right? And then we want to save time. We want to unify the solution. We want to simplify the things. The threats are already complicated. They are multi-layered. You already need to have different tools. So the more unification you can do, it will be much more easier for you, and you would know what's happening in your kingdom, right? Just by unifying and simplifying this approach, because it will save time, it will save resources, and that's how you will be always on the serve, right? That's how always you can take a look on what's happening there. So yes, this is very important to have this solution which will be unified. I think you have a very good example with the islands, Markus, if you want to bring in.
Yeah, I love the islands. Yeah, we call it, even the German, you call it island solutions, because every solution is an island, and it's pretty good in what it's doing. There is my island for AV, there is my island for backup, there's an island for disaster recovery, remote management, vulnerability assessment, and so on. The The bad thing about islands is between islands there's water, and this water is misused by the bad guys. And I'm always saying that the pirate in the boat is coming with the paddles slowly and attack you. So therefore you need a solution which is closing down this water, bringing the islands together. I already mentioned in a webinar, and people were laughing at the Acronis continent. So we try to get rid of this islands. But what often people forgot about reducing the number of agents is also the fact the big issue mostly comes when you are under attack, because then you have to coordinate all of these tools. Yeah, the management is already sometimes a nightmare, but the real nightmare starts when you have an attack. Which tool need I now to start, to protect, whatever? So this is where people struggle, and this is where they fail at the end. So it's really important to take out this complexity, because when you're under attack, you're already on stress. Adrenaline is in your body. Your brain is not working really correct, and therefore you need an easy solution. One console, one click, oh, incident, here we go, fix it.
Yeah, and then consumption of the resources, right, on the other end with all this number of agents. So the other one, take advantage of security framework like NIST. Of course, you need to follow the guidelines because, first of all, you're not the only one who is fighting against it, right? There are always people around you who also have, I wouldn't say the same issues, but similar ones. You can learn from it. And there are also best practices which you can follow, how you can react. So it is important, whether it's ISO, whether it's EMEA with recommendations in Europe, right? Or whether it's NIST, you need to follow the frameworks. You need to follow the best practices. And that's also one of the important points when you create this incident response plan. Do you agree with me, Markus?
Absolutely, absolutely. Best practice frameworks is absolutely important, because you're not, as you said, Irina, you're not the first guy. So therefore, let's see what is from the experts the framework around security, and then take it and use it for your own environment. No matter what it's called, NIST, ISO, NIS, or GDPR, just use it.
It of course it depends on the on your region, right? Because that's how they're created. But yeah, it's important to follow best practices. So the step number 10, implement a robust data protection regime. I think it's Markus already have started talking about it, right? But for us, it's important also to talk about this multi-layered approach, right? Again, to mention that their cyber criminals can strike from different sides, and we should have a solution which will be able to support us. And if one layer will fail, will there be another one to support you, right? So if, let's say, like we have, for example, active protection in Acronis, right, which already stops ransomware. But what's interesting is that how this in ransomware get in the system. Maybe it went through the email, right? And maybe email security didn't get you. Maybe you were using it from other vendor, right? And it went through. So it wasn't stop, or maybe it was a phishing attack, which was on really different layers, and not all of these layers were identified. So in the final end, the ransomware arrived to your machine, but it was detected by active protection, so it was stopped, and ransomware attack didn't succeed. But then it's very important to have those different layers to make sure that you do have a robust protection, right? And of course, you need to have measures. You need to have like also backup. So once the ransomware stopped, your data will be reverted back, your backup will be safe. And that's what's important, right? To make sure that if even one of the layers will fail, you will have another one to protect you. Anything from your side, Markus?
No, only maybe one thing in this layer approach, what I'm always saying is prevention is better than curing. So when I have some layers to prevent me from something, it's always better than at the end, how to say, recover. By the way, because I hear this often, backup is my last line of defense, and I have to say, no, it's not. You already mentioned there is ransomware which is taking your backup by encrypting the data or deleting. So the real last line of defense for me is disaster recovery.
And that's, I think, our next step over here. So it's like you knew, Markus, or maybe not, just guessing in the air. Okay. And of course, it's important disaster recovery. You want to continue on this one, Markus?
Yeah, as said, we see different malwares and ransomware which are searching the environment for backups, and even volume shadow copies from Windows are not protected. So there is malware which is taking these copies as well. So there is no backup at the end you can recover. And the other thing is, and there is a bad example, unfortunately, in Germany with a hospital. I think it's 2 years ago now. They were hit by ransomware really hard. And for them, it was easier and cheaper to rebuild everything from scratch. So they rebuilt the complete IT system. It's a nightmare. So therefore, you need to have some disaster recovery plan, because if everything is encrypted and your machines are not able to take the recovery, so where should you recover? So switch to disaster recovery side, run your business, and in the meantime, fix your issue. That's how I see this.
Business continuity. Okay, very good one. And of course, that step number 12 is building an incident response plan. And of course, Markus will talk and will walk you through, right, how to build an efficient one. As I've said, he will share some tricks and tips. So let's wait just a couple more minutes before that. But what's important, and I always, one of the, let's say, wise colleagues shared with me that once you test your plan and once you're ready with it, please print it. Because if it's somewhere on, I don't know, on SharePoint, if it's somewhere in the system and your data has been encrypted, goodbye incident response plan, right? It won't be so easy to get it on. Maybe there will be panic. Maybe there will happen. So print it, have it on a paper. Yes, it is old school, but that's how you keep it safe, right? That's how you know what to do in this critical situation, because there is no more if, there is only when. So please be prepared. And on this note, I think we will jump to the session of Markus, where he will teach us how to create a good incident response plan.
Okay, wow. The hurdle is really high now. No, it's more what I did is I collected a few points where I think that's important, and I want to share it with you. We don't, how to say, I will not create a plan now because every plan is individual also, but there is a framework. So Irina, please go to my first slide and talk a little bit about, in general, what is an incident response plan, because also here sometimes people don't understand or misunderstand what it is. And I found a really nice description is saying an incident response plan is a written document formally approved by the senior leadership team that helps your organization before, during, and after a confirmed or suspected security incident. Your IRP will clarify roles and responsibilities and will provide guidance and on key activities. So sounds a bit weird, but everything is really important in this sentence, and the sentence brings everything more or less to the point. It is a written document. It is approved from somebody. So it's not I'm a T, I'm writing a plan because I think this is a good idea. It's always something, how to say, more eyes are better than just two, and it needs to be approved from somebody to have this acknowledged as well. And it contains different things. And we rely, and most companies rely on NIST. We already mentioned the NIST. By the way, what is the NIST? The National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a US department, which is giving out this framework. And the incident response framework is a 4-steps framework. The NIST framework includes preparation and prevention, already mentioned from our side. Detection and analysis, really important, analyzing what's going on. Containment, eradication and recovery, and post-incident activities. This is something often people forgot. You see the blue part on the far right side, post-incident activities. Sometimes what we see, people stop on maybe the recovery, say, oh, we recovered everything, so now we are fine. Unfortunately, often in this case, what we see is this reoccurring infections, because you need to clean up. Maybe the hacker, the malware, the whatever it is, it's still in your network. And it's doing weird things and it's restarting and so on. So therefore, the post-incident is a really important activity. And beside the NIST, thank you, Irina. You can read my mind. I was just about to say, next slide, please. Beside NIST being in the US and we are in Europe, maybe you heard about NIST 2, the new cyber resilience version 2 or whatever. The NIST 2 directive in Europe, it will start next year, I think in August or October. Don't nail me down on a date, unfortunately. But it's important because it's a must for most of the companies. NIST, the first version, was for special important verticals, and with NIST 2 now a lot of more companies need to be compliant with NIST 2. And one big topic here, and that's why I put in this many text slide I don't like, but you need to see the 4 steps, because one really important step is number 3. What is it? Implement response and recovery plans. So also not only the NIST, also the NIST 2, so the European cyber security government, however you want to call it, says you need to have a proper plan. You need to have an incident response plan. And this is why we created also our solution around the NIST framework and the incident response plan. And we included more or less the basic steps of the IRP in the product. So in the event of a cybersecurity incident, best practice incident response guideline. Follow a well-established 7-step process. I need to read all the 7 here. Prepare, identify, contain, eradicate, restore, learn, test and repeat. Preparation matters. Most of these points we covered already in our 12 points lists. We talked about most of them. We talked about be prepared and prepare yourself, prepare also your IT, maybe close down network ports. Identify, which is perfectly vulnerability assessment. Identify a potential issue. Contain, also here, the possibility to scan systems, to scan a backup against malware. Eradicate and restore, self-explaining. Learn, we talked about learn, awareness training. see how people react if they get phishing, and test and repeat. And test and repeat is really important. It's not only about writing a plan, it's also about testing the plan, because only if you test the plan, you will figure out if the plan is working out. This reminds me on a story about a company testing a new security, but the security was not about the IT, a bit as well IT, because everything is IT related, but it was the door security. And everybody went out of the building, and then they figured out, oh, we forgot the door opener on the outside, and nobody was able to enter to the office again. And this was only figured out due to testing. And the same is with your IT and your incident response plan. Write it down, test it, analyze the result, and then adapt. And by the way, in my eyes, an incident response plan is always something which needs to be adapted. It's not something, hey, we have a plan. We tested it 10 years ago. I think it's still working. No, this is something, it's a regular base. The whole security thing is on a regular base. You always need to adapt. Things are changing. New systems, new people, new attacks. Maybe after ransomware, due to AI, there's coming something pretty new, whatever. It's not encrypting the data. It's, I don't know, materialize and beam the data somewhere, I don't know, whatever in science fiction you can imagine. It maybe sometimes it will happen. So be prepared on this. And maybe go to the next slide. I took another example, which is everybody should know this. It's just an emergency evacuation plan. We are all used to this. This is something we see in hotels, in offices, and even at home sometimes. If you, like me, you live in a big castle with many, many rooms and thousands of square. No, just kidding. But you should know what to do in case of fire. And therefore, it's totally normal that we have these plans. We have it on the walls, we have it printed, and even we test it. I know here in my town, in schools and offices, we regular test this. Okay, in case of fire, what to do? Go here, this is the way to escape, this is the meeting room, and so on. This is totally normal. And this should be exactly the same on your IT. Your incident response plan should look like your emergency evacuation plan, and test it. And also here, this is a plan. Yeah, mostly it's printed out on the walls, but it might change. Maybe there is a floor now which is closed because we created a new door there or a new wall or whatever. So also here you have this, and they do it, by the way. The especially fire department is coming and checking. I think they do it every year. So in this case, it's totally normal for us. And this should be the same in IT. It should be normal for us. And I have another example here, 3 slides with a few examples. So let's shortly go through them. We're sharing the deck. You can check it. So here are some elements which are explained. Response process, how should be or how can, I have to say can, it's always a can, not a must or a have to, because every IT is different, so therefore every plan is somehow different. So these are a few examples here how to respond. And as said, I will share the deck, so I have it here in the references. And I want to go a bit further because Irina mentioned something. So maybe you can click to slide 35, Irina. Again, please. Yeah, this one. You said it already, and I tried to bring it on one slide. And I love what you said, and this is what I'm always saying. Guys, cloud is really cool. I love cloud services. Everything is fine. But in some cases, you should be old-fashioned. And an emergency plan should be on paper. Print it, maybe laminate it into a foil and pin it on the wall or whatever. Because you guess what? If it's in the cloud, if it's digital, it's fine that you have it on SharePoint, but your SharePoint is not available. Or if you have it on your file server and your file server is encrypted. So, hey, my emergency plan is also encrypted. Haha, funny. No, it's not. So keep it on a piece of paper, old school, old fashioned. Maybe you draw it like on this picture here, really fancy. Anyway, however, you need to have it really in physical. You need to have it on the wall. And by the way, not only one plan. Make copies. A copy here, a copy maybe in your home office, because sometimes in these days now, we don't work from work every time. So you have multiple copies, and you have a copy with your colleague, and you have a copy with your friend, with your husband, with your wife, whatever. Just in case. You cannot imagine. The worst thing is you're under a stress. Where is our plan? Oh God. So two really important, for me, the most important parts are really create your plan, have it available, and test it. Test, test, test. This is how you learn you have an issue in your plan. And this is how you learn how to say, because it's not, you are not relaxed, but to be more relaxed. If something happened, hey, I'm relaxed. We trained it so often. I know exactly. Here is my tool. I log in. Here I can disconnect my machine from the network. Here I can do this and that. This is why you should have your plan trained on a regular base. And we have a nice resource for you available. Oh, you took out the link slide. Anyway, we will send it out to you, because we have this 12-step ransomware response plan for businesses available for download on our website. We have an incident response plan checklist. So we collected already, because to be honest, you don't need to found everything by yourself. There is best practice from NIST, from NIST2, as mentioned, and also from our side. With people like Irina in our big security team. No, how should I name your team, Irina? I don't know. CPOC team. So we have the right clever people. So they wrote already some good notes for you. Just make use of it.
Yes, it's Cyber Protection Operations Center team. Yes, guys. So, but thank you, Markus. It's true, and that's 12 steps. We have discussed them, right? And we will share the link. And I think it's a good time to jump to the questions, right, Angel? And I do see already one question running in, but there might be more. I cannot see all of them.
I've got from my side a couple of them, which, by the way, a very good presentation, and definitely, well, in summary, is where you want to say is to plan is to take care of yourself or the IT. I like it, your slide of the emergency slide map, and it's true, because you see that in everywhere, in the hotel, in everywhere. And exactly, we should have that in the IT. Everyone have to have this in the IT. It's true. That's a very good point, a very good slide. And yes, I've got. Are you going? Do we have any other question in the chat? Because I've got here a couple of questions that many people asking me to ask you. You want me to ask the question that I've got? I've got a couple of them here.
Yes, go ahead, Angel. We are ready.
No, I thought you got another one in the chat. Sorry. Okay, so what are the top 3 recommendations for developing an effective plan that won't fail in case of a real event? That's a good one.
Well, for me, I would say the first one is, of course, to create it, because it should be a written one. It shouldn't be just in your mind. So please establish it, create it, then, of course, test it. And I do emphasize on this, and I emphasized during the presentation, retest it, because it should be always adjusted. And when you do test and retest it, there are some of the new things which pop up, like with the example with the emergency evacuation plan, or in IT, you can always find something new. You can always find a new employee who is not aware of whether he or she has to do anything, right? And to make sure that you are ready to the current situation, it should be proactive testing. It should include incident response exercises. You should have this tabletop exercises where you can discuss, right? You should have penetration testing. Even the use of purple teaming won't hurt. But again, it depends on type of company which you have, because people need to react fast, and this what will help you to keep your company safe. And one more thing which came while I was thinking, because then I was thinking about consequences, it's actually budget. Because sometimes when you create, and we haven't, I think, mentioned it during this presentation, but when you create this incident response plan, make sure that you have budget, right, to do all these actions, because that's what companies can face, that they do want to respond, but they do not have this possibility. And money is important, right? So that's also important part.
Good point. Good point. And I'm curious about this question. Listen to that one. How is important to include the physical? Because we were considering always like in mind, like software, but now it's a very, very tricky question. Is it how's important to include a physical incident in our incident response plan? I mean, things like fire, flooding, this type of things. So how how's important that?
It is. Should I answer here? It is important. This is something we didn't cover in this session now, but it's still important. And especially in my region, I'm based in Germany, we see more and more that this physical stuff is also hitting us. We never talked about flood in Germany, but now we have it. And in Italy, by the way, Irina, you have it as well. So it's becoming more and more important. I'm always saying nature is striking back. So it depends, but you should be prepared. But one thing here is what often people forgot. The big issue, I have to say, and I don't take me out of this, is the most hard to control issue is the human in front of the machine. Most of these incidents are done by humans still, and it begins with the click in the phishing email, but also I clicked the wrong button, I cut it the wrong line, I turned off the wrong power, whatever, deleted the wrong files. So this is something you should also expect and calculate and plan and test. To come back to the 3 recommendations: number 1, test; number 2, test; number 3, test. So yeah, for sure.
Actually, I wanted to mention it's not only insiders, right? There are also outsiders who can get those unauthorized access, right? To some of the details, like we discussed how data breach is happening, like even in this hotel, they're just keeping their password. It's a conference. Here you go. Password is there. It's so easy. So of course, it's important to keep those physical, even though it might seem, how is it connected? It is very, very much and pretty much connected. So yes, it should be adjusted
Very good.
to the physical incidents, I mean.
Good, good. It's a very well note. If we got 2 minutes, for you guys, you can answer in 2 minutes. I give you the last question, okay? Because we covered 1 hour, okay? I know it's quite a lot of things, very interesting, but let's use those last 2 minutes for that question. How exactly do we go about testing and evaluating our incident response plan?
tabletop exercise. Very important to have simulated exercises. It's very important. That's how your plan should be adjusted, and you should perform also comprehensive exercises. And I saw in QAs there was a question like how often. The more often you can do it, please do it. I know you cannot do it every day, but please plan it. Plan your testing. And most important, what Markus have also emphasized, post-incident review, right? You need to see what happened. You need to identify what you need to analyze how effective the response is. You need to get the feedback and then follow on continuous improvement of this. Back to you, Markus. Minute is for you as well.
1 minute. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
You can be a little bit further if you like, and 1 minute. anyway, I think we covered it in 1 hour. I think we covered this very interesting topic. One of the topic covered in endpoint security. We will see more. Okay, as you can see, I don't know how many webinars we have done with Acronis, which is one of the panel that they are covering very, very well us to the security topic, the security environment. And we are going to keep it doing this, okay? Bring more interesting topics, bring new or more interesting things that discovering us more information, helping us more information. So thank you so much, Irina. Thank you so much, Markus, again. Both very good presentation. For your information, guys, the session has been recorded. Okay, so for those you missing, you can watch it late. And see you again. See you in the next, guys. Have a nice, I would say weekend, but not yet, but tomorrow will be weekend. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a nice rest of the week. Okay.
Thank you for having us. Keep
Thank
safe
you.
and stay cyber fit, guys. Cheers.